Good morning, welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Sunday, November the 10th, 2024, and what a day of boxing we had yesterday. If you didn't catch it, I was hoping it would be on. Not only was it on for pretty much all day. It was 6 hours or something like that, I think it was on. It was a Keyshawn Davis and Gustavo Lemos fight. It was entertaining while it lasted. I'm actually glad there's a couple of fights on there that maybe would have looked to have gone the distance and didn't, just to maybe shorten the day, because hey, I love my day of boxing, but 6 hours, the Top Rank becoming the new Riyadh season with these long cards. I'm not quite sure, is it a common thing with Top Rank? I don't think it is. When I saw it actually advertised on the Foxtel thing below, when they have the hour, when it starts, when it finishes. I saw it started at 10:30, ends at 4:30. I'm thinking, well, that can't be right. You can't have a 6 hour boxing card. But yes, we did. It was the Davis show, wasn't it? It was all the Davises on the same card in Norfolk, Virginia. Hello. And headlined by Keyshawn Davis and Gustavo Lemos. So, geez, is he the real deal? Look, he was very impressive. Keyshawn Davis, 2 rounds, of course, but I'm just going to reserve judgment just a little bit. I know afterwards they're talking about fights with Tank Davis and maybe Barachuck and these types of guys, and that's fine. Maybe they are on the agenda, but what I look at in the fight is that Lemos, he only had the one loss, but custom made for a fighter like Davis. Davis is a real sharpshooter, very much in the mould of Terence Crawford and these types of guys, but he's very similar to even like a Shakur Stevenson as well. They stand off in that sort of Floyd Mayweather type of defence, the shell or whatever you want to call it. And they pinpoint their shots and the sharpshooters, as I said. So I just get a feeling that Lemos is very much in that category, and as impressive as it was, I don't think he's going to get the same latitude, if you want to call it, against someone like a Tank Davis or even a Barachuck, who is a very, very tough fighter as well. So look, he got the job done. That's all he had to do. Geez, they were great shots too. And what I liked about him was that when he got Lemos hurt, he just got him out of there real quick. And that's a sign of a very, very good fighter. And Lemos is tough, hard. These Argentinians, they're sort of built that way. But I thought Lemos, I've always sort of thought a very, very limited type of fighter. And as I said, I think it was very custom made for Keyshawn Davis. But talking a big game with Davis, I've got a feeling it might be just a couple of fights too early for him to fight Davis. However, geez, if Tank Davis is fighting the likes of Lamont Roach, then maybe it could be a possibility down the track. On the undercard, that was probably the more entertaining fight. Well, pretty much on a par, because that also only went 2 rounds, and what a fight that was. Come on, man. Abdullah Mason and what was his name? Johan Vasquez. What a fight. I wouldn't probably go as far as to call it the fight of the year. Come on, man, we've got to cross the road. But I think it was definitely probably the most dramatic, entertaining, whatever you might want to call it. 2 rounds or a round and a half of absolute mayhem. So I think we had Mason, who came out like it was just going to happen for him, just another body to put on the list, and walked straight into, was it a left hook, wasn't it? A beautiful punch, because he actually had the hand up with the glove up, what you're supposed to do, and got nailed pretty much like Tim Tszyu did against Murtazaliev, and down he went. More of a shock knockdown, nothing like we saw with Tim. And then he gets up, and was it his turn or did he get dropped again? But anyway, I think he might have got dropped. No, it was Vasquez who then went for it and had Mason in all sorts of trouble. Then he gets dropped with a brutal and brilliant punch, and I thought the fight was over there. And he gets up and drops Mason again with another left hook. It was just crazy. It was, what was it, 3 knockdowns in the first round, and then the second round, Mason got the job done with another brilliant uppercut. So it was just a really entertaining fight. And as I said, I don't think it's really fight of the year because you've got to have probably a more drawn out type of fight. But it was entertaining. It was dramatic. It was just back and forth. It was a really, really good fight. So, but yeah, good day of fights with particularly those two guys. Now, before I get on to today's little episode on my boxing journey, today I'm going to cover my first year as a senior in the big league, the Victorian Amateur or the Australian Amateur Boxing Association, so what is called Boxing Australia these days. I want to just answer or question or quickly cover a question from one of our YouTube viewers, Dennis Green. Shout out to you, Dennis. Sent me a message on there asking about weight. Now, he used to be a jockey apparently, and they used to take different pills and all that sort of stuff, and asking how it relates to boxing and whether they had those issues of cramping and all this sort of stuff. Well, the way I'd probably answer that is that it's what boxers and UFC fighters and all those types of combat sports participants go through is probably a lot different to jockeys, because I've known a lot of jockeys over the years. I used to share a lot of saunas with them back in the day. I met a lot of them. So I'd be down at the local sports club or fitness club, whatever it was, in the sauna, and they'd be in there as well. And the difference was, and I know everyone is, maybe varies a little bit in the way they go about it, but you would find the jockeys, because they have to sustain their weight all day at the meets, they have to probably do it a little bit different. They have to be they have to obviously maintain it. Boxers, or they do it a little bit differently, because we only have to weigh in the morning of the fight, and then we've got all day to hydrate, and we fight with some level of hydration and food and all that sort of stuff. So I never experienced cramps. I've seen some horrific things over the years with fighters trying to make weight. Some of them I felt sorry for, some of them I didn't, because it was their own fault. I was on numerous teams with people who were just lazy and just did it all in the last minute, or the last day before the weigh-in or the morning of the weigh-in. But yeah, I never saw anything like that where fighters were physically cramping or, and because I think they would be ruled out straight away if that was the case. With boxing, it's a little bit different to obviously sitting on a horse, even though that's tough as well. So. But yeah, for me, I never really, look, I had problems, but I didn't have problems because I did the weight hard, because I didn't probably have the education or someone around me to guide me through. Like, I didn't have these chefs and that go away with fighters and that these days, and go away with the teams and nutritionists and all that sort of stuff. We didn't sort of have that back then. So it was pretty much just do it yourself. And my way was just starvation, living on the bare necessities. I'll tell some stories of that as we go, but that was, my thing was just basically to starve and train with sweatsuits and all this sort of stuff, so which is not a great way to do things. So looking at, I think knowing now, or if I hadn't known then what I know now, I think I would have made the weight quite comfortably. I never didn't make weight ever. But as I said, I sort of did it hard sometimes just because of ignorance of how to do it. It was just, as I said, the old-fashioned way of not eating in sweatsuits. So, but I always had one thing I did always have though was a plan, a structure. Just the way I've always been through my life, to be honest, where I would have in my mind, okay, 4 weeks out, we've got to be this weight. I would have to hit a mark. 3 weeks out, I would hit a mark. 2 weeks out, 1 week out. And then if I got to fight week where there's a tournament or we're going away, whatever it might have been, if I was going away, I'd actually hit weight before I'd go, because I knew I would put on 2, 3, even 4 kilos just in, not training for a couple of days, and you're eating and drinking a little bit more. It would come straight off, but I would sort of, just for my own mental well-being, I would hit weight. So, but yeah, if it was just a tournament that we're at home or whatever it might be, we're just quickly traveling to, I would try and be fight week probably about 3 kilos over, and then the day before the weigh-in be 2 kilos over, and then I would simply hit the weight the night before with a little bit of sweats, with a sweatsuit on and a little bit of doing whatever, and then jump into either the sauna or a steamy bathroom, whatever it was, and I'd hit weight before I'd go to bed, and I was actually quite good. So I did it that way, but yeah, I've got no doubt that if I had the proper people around me as far as nutritionists and that sort of stuff, I should have made it. I was only, what am I, just under 5'8", weighing 67 kilos. I'm not the biggest guy, so I was always a sort of a small welterweight. I probably had a light welterweight's body, but I sort of held a lot of weight around my waist and my legs. That's probably where the weight was, but yeah, always handled myself okay, and it was always probably a bit of advantage, to be honest, to have that little extra power and strength below the waist as well. So, but yeah, to answer your question there, Dennis, look, I'm sure there are boxers out there that experience that sort of stuff, but more out of just being silly with the way they made weight. I was always pretty good, and when I actually did make weight, I was very fortunate that as hard as I made the weight, and I've done it hard many times, I would, as soon as I had a chance to eat and drink, I'd be back. You know, I know a lot of people probably have suffered in their weight cut, but for me, never a drama. So, and I used to always probably sit at about 72, 73, and I'd fight at 67. So in this day and age, it's not a big weight. I've seen stories of fighters losing 6, 7, 8 kilos the week of the fight. So it's just ridiculous. So, but that's the way I beat it, by just being structured and having that countdown, if you will, of just knowing where you're at X amount of weeks out from the fight. It's not that hard when you do it, but there's a lot of fighters I went away with who would get to camp or even to the tournament 5, 6 kilos over and then just lose it all the night before in the morning of. It's just pretty silly. You should be concentrating on the event at hand or the fight at hand, not worrying about making weight. That should be the least of your concerns. It should just be just a side thing. But anyway, everyone's different. So I hope I sort of answered that a little bit for you, Dennis. But I used to love the jockeys. We used to sit in there, and I'd be in there for maybe, you know, I might sit in there for an hour, sort of off and on a little bit. They'd be in there for 2, 3, 4 hours, and they'd lie on the floor of the sauna with a little bucket of soapy water, I think they used to use, and they just continue to wipe themselves down, and then they put the soapy water back on. They had a process, but they'd be in there for hours. It's just crazy. So full respect to the jockeys out there who then had to get on a big horse and do their thing. But anyway, on to today's episode and journey of my boxing career, and this time we're in 1992. So I'd gotten back from Canada, and as an 18-year-old, it was all great up until I got home, and I'm thinking, you know, I was away and having the ball, and I got home thinking, well, now what? You know, no job, no nothing. I didn't really know what to do with myself, but I knew as far as boxing what I wanted to do, and that was the Olympic year. Now, I wasn't going to qualify for the Olympics, of course. I'd been away for a year and just hadn't had the experience, so I didn't even really try. I know there was maybe talk about maybe challenging the likes, what was I, welterweight, so challenging the likes of Stephen Strickland, but I was in no position to challenge. I mean, he was a national champion, probably Oceania champion, he was world ranked, all that sort of stuff. I didn't have a hope in hell of even going for it, so I didn't bother. But I had a couple of early fights, and you know, just got back on my feet for the year. I think I only had maybe 7 or 8 fights for the year, but towards the end of the year, I had my first, what was, because I don't think I'd fought for a couple of months, so I needed to tune up before the Nationals, so I fought a guy in Melbourne called Tony Ginger O'Brien, and it was really hard to get fights, and which shouldn't be an issue for an adult that weighs 67 kilos. It's one of the most common divisions or weight divisions for boxing, but for some reason there was no one to fight at the state titles. So I fought Tony Ginger O'Brien, who was a middleweight. So he had about 5 or 6 kilos on me. He was about 6'1", me being 5'8". He was a monster compared to me, and he was a really solid guy and a really nice guy too, by the way. But so I bowled him over in a show in Melbourne just to get a fight under my belt. And I still remember it because I was in a really bad mood that day, because my football team, Carlton, had to win that day to get into the finals, and they got beaten by the West Coast Eagles, and I was pissed, and got in the ring, and poor old Tony felt the brunt of that day. I even had the Carlton logo and stuff on my trunks back then. And still to this day I'm pretty passionate, as you can probably realise. But so I took it out on poor Ginger O'Brien. Then went to the Nationals. Okay, so it was in Darwin, 1992, and as I said, it was after the Olympics. So I was a bit starstruck. There was Bomber Peden. There was Justin Crawford there? I think he might have been. I can't remember because I was sort of focused. But I just remember watching Robbie Peden because I think a lot of the Olympians didn't go to the Nationals that year. But I remember there was a particular fight between Robbie Peden and James Swan. And Swanee gave Robbie Peden all he could handle. Didn't get the win, but I remember thinking this guy is bloody good and can fight, and I was right because he ended up being my teammate on many trips going forward, including the Olympic Games. This is Swanee I'm talking about, and of course Bomber as well. But I had 3 fights there, and my first fight, I must admit, I was a little bit, wow, you know, this is the big time. You could just feel it was a little bit different, you know. You got Arthur Tunstall sitting at ringside. He was the main man, obviously, in amateur boxing back then. And I remember it was hot up there as well in Darwin. I mean, it's hot up there every day. But I fought a South Australian first up. I think his name was Jimmy Carter, if you can believe that. He was a solid guy. Just probably you'd call him just a battler. Obviously he could fight. He was a state champion from South Australia, so I got over the top of him with a decision. And then I was on to what was his name? Shane White was his name, from Queensland. And it was interesting because New South Wales and Queensland both send big teams. They always have. I know these days Victoria is pretty big, but back then we weren't. We only had a team of about 6 or 7 of us that went up there. So you don't see that day. And actually one of those members was, if you're into the Underbelly series, was Andrew Benji Veneman, was a little 14 or 15-year-old kid on our team, if you can believe that. So and I remember trying to talk to him, wouldn't give me much. Probably best that I didn't probably get too close to young Benji. But anyway, that's a different story. But so I fought, that's what I was getting to. So we only had 6 or 7 people there. It might have been 7 or 8, whatever it was, but it wasn't a lot. And I remember getting into the fights and fighting Shane White, and the Queensland team were there, and they were everywhere, and they get the chants going, you know, Queenslander, and all the rest of it. And a little bit daunting, the whole arena sort of chanting for him. But I must admit, I got a little bit of the white line fever sometimes in there. And once I knew that I sort of had him covered, poor old Shane wore the brunt of my excitement or adrenaline that day, because I sort of fed on the crowd that were cheering. And as I said, poor old Shane, copped it on that day. So I beat him. I think I might have stopped him from memory, and then into the final, which was unexpected because I fought a fighter named Michael Nash from Western Australia. And at that point, Western Australia wasn't really a boxing state. I mean, it had some excellent fighters from WA, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't really known at that stage as being a power state. And he'd gotten through, and he'd actually beaten a mate of mine from New South Wales. Wasn't a mate back then, by the way, but David Birchall, I think he'd beaten Dave. And so I expected to probably fight Dave in the final, but I fought Michael Nash instead. And for the first 2 rounds, it was, I was sort of cruising, doing my thing. I thought I was sort of winning the fight, no dramas. And at that point too, I was pretty banged up. I was just that type of fighter who just couldn't help make what should be sort of a relatively straightforward fight into a tough fight. I just couldn't help myself, and I just lead him with the heads and elbows and shoulders, not deliberately, but just I was that charge ahead type of fighter. And by the 3rd fight, I remember I had a really sore shoulder, and I had bloody cuts and bruises and everything all over me. I was really sore. And in that fight, he actually cut me across the bridge of the nose. It wasn't a bad cut because it didn't have to go to the doctor or anything, but it was just a little cut, and I had a little bit of blood and all that there. But I was really banged up, and in the 3rd round, I really started to feel the effects, and he'd probably come home in the last probably minute, and didn't shake me and no cancer, nothing like that, but he got the better of me in the last minute, and to the point where they thought they might have got the decision, which was never going to happen. I won the first 2.5 rounds quite easily, I thought, but I got the win. I ended up fighting him 3 times in the next 3 or 4 months. Old Michael Nash, poor old Michael never ended up getting the win, but he was a tough guy and a really, really nice guy too from WA. So that was my first nationals. So I'd won 3 fights up there. Yeah, I was on top of the world. I for the first time really, I mean, I'd always have belief, I suppose, but the first time I'd really thought, well, I'm capable of doing the things that I want to do, the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, and all that sort of stuff. Because watching, the other fighters up there, particularly, as I said, Robbie Peden, I'm pretty sure Crawford had been there as well. It wouldn't be like him to take the year off. I remember Darren Obar was there. He'd been in the Olympics in '88. He won his 10th straight nationals, I think it was, or 10th in total, whatever it was. I'm sure Crawford, if he's in the chat, he'll correct me. But I just thought all of a sudden, all right, I'm on par with these guys now. It's that belief. And sometimes, whether it be boxing or football or whatever it might be, sometimes you've just got to hang with the best in your sport just to get that belief. You might think you can do it, but sometimes you just need validation, and that was my validation in that. Look, I'd gone to Dale and I'd had 3 really tough fights against 3 really good guys in probably the most competitive division there, the welterweights. Sort of welterweights and light middleweights were probably where it was always the most competitive, but or had the most competition there. But yeah, it was vindication. I had my gold medal, and a little bit bittersweet. So I remember when I rang home, I'd sort of learnt that my grandmother had passed away while I'd been up there, so it was a little bit of bittersweet. But at least I thought, well, there's one thing for her as well, that I'd got the gold medal. So, but yeah, that was the start of things to come, and we'll get on to the more nationals next year, and the world titles that I went to as well, the first one. And I remember actually there was a fight before my fight up in Darwin, and a guy by the name of Richard Rolls. Now I remember seeing him in the prelims, winning quite easily. He fought a guy named Danny McGrail, and I thought I could probably fight this guy one day, and he got knocked over in 1 round by Danny McGrail, and I thought, oh well, that's the end of him. Won't be seeing too much of Richie going forward. He's got a glass jaw. I would fight him next year at the Nationals, and let's just say that I was proven wrong. I'll get to that. And Richie, of course, would end up being my 96 Olympics teammate and Commonwealth Games teammate as well. But I remember seeing him thinking, oh, well, he's no threat now. He's just got bowled over by Danny McGrail in the first round. Won't be seeing much of him anymore. And yes, I did see plenty of Richie in 1993, but I'll get to that in the next episode. But guys, I think that's about it. Look, as I said, over the year, it was great to get back from Canada. Really start to step up the box. I think by that stage I probably had close to 50 fights I'm gathering. I don't know, I'm not keeping count here, but it'd be between 40 and 50. And as I said, really starting to find my way in boxing, starting to believe that I can achieve those goals that I'd set as a kid. So I hope you're enjoying the story so far. Again, if you've got any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them in these videos. And as I said, tomorrow we'll cover 1993, where I go to my first World Championships, not just World Championships, my first international tournament, which is the Oceania Games as well. So there's the Oceania Games, the World Championships, and then that showdown with Richie Rolls at the Nationals. So guys, hope you have a great day, and we'll catch you tomorrow.